Hello, dear Soul Spark community. Today we're going on the spiritual path again, and today with Attila Kalo, and he's a very grounded spiritual teacher. Welcome, Attila.
Thank you for having me. Nice to be here, Lucia. Thank you for welcoming me to the community. And hello, everyone out there.
Yeah. So if anybody who has a question, you can put it down in the comments. But first, I have also a lot of questions for you, Attila. First, where are you located and what sparks your soul about the spiritual path?
Yeah. I'm in Ottawa, which is in Canada. What sparks my soul? Geez. Um, since an early age, I always had experiences that were unexplainable. And I always wondered, is there more to life than what meets the eye? Because I was sensing there's more, but what I was seeing was limited. And growing up, I was raised Catholic, and I never really got it. I always went to church, heard the words, but I didn't really get it personally. And at the age of 27, I had a near-death experience that changed my life. And from there, I came back and just opened my eyes and looked around as if for the first time. And the first thing came to me is, what is this place? And I'm in a body. And I was confused, utterly confused. And so I guess the lifelong quest began at that point. I had a deep desire to want to know, who am I? What is life? What is this place? And so that really what sparked my soul's journey to not just know it, but to really experience it or understand it better.
Yeah. So what did you started to do from that moment?
Um, I had a lot of confusion and I really questioned reality. Like I'm like, what's going on here? I mean, I had this experience. We could call it a soul experience. And then I'm coming into this place and I'm in the body and everything. And I had started to seek, the answers to this and had a Buddhist friend, and he had given me a book called the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And I'm reading the book and I'm like, wow, someone understands this, because I wasn't that spiritual at the time. I had, followed some religion, but didn't really get it. And then reading the Buddhist text, I just realized someone really understood what I experienced. So that got me into wanting to follow Buddhism, understand Buddhism, read, learn more about Buddhism. And it really felt like it was in alignment with kind of what I was looking for. From there, I found out about some retreats that were happening, and they're called the Enlightenment Intensive. And on these retreats, they do self-inquiry, and they start with the koan, who am I? And a friend of mine told me about this, and I said, geez, this is my life question here. Like, I'm in. As soon as he said, we contemplate and we do self-inquiry around who am I was sold. And so I had signed up, went on this retreat, and from there it was history. I mean, I just absolutely loved the process, had a deep, direct experience on who am I, which aligned with this near-death experience. So I knew it was the truth. It clarified things. The mind was just utterly um, clarified about who am I. And then I went on to ponder, what am I? That's another koan we use. Another koan is, what is life? What is another, and what is love? So working through these koans, it really straightened things out for me, but brought me to experience these truths. So I guess I've never been off the path since then, and now I teach the work.
Yeah, beautiful. So when you start asking yourself that question, who am I? Like, how did that go? Did you immediately say, "Oh, this is who I am," and la la la, or was it like maybe you first you thought you were human, and then you thought you were love or something. Then you thought you were like, I'm really really curious how that was for you.
Yeah, good question. And it's a it's a little bit tricky to understand because when we go through the process, all these answers come up. And the answers of well, I'm human, um, I'm a dad, I'm a whatever your social role is. These all arise, and it's the mind and what it's identified with. So of course, I start out and I'm this guy, I'm this martial artist, I'm a business owner, and I was pretty proud of it all. I thought this is great. I get to just tell all these things about myself. And weeding through all that, you start to look at it and say, well, that's a role I play. But there's something deeper here, and I want to experience that. So the process we use allows you to communicate with your contemplation. So we're going for who am I? And as we do that, the mind arises with all these answers and stories about our life and things we've done and things we want to tell people and these ideas about ourselves. So it's yeah, so that's part of the journey, but it's always going deeper and deeper beyond all that. Coming into contact with the truth is what we're going for. Yeah.
So, but like, I'm half in the story. Like, I want to know who you are or what you're
Okay.
discovering.
Sure. Sure. So here I am contemplating who am I and everything else. And there was a moment where everything just became ultra clear. And I was just sitting there and the mind had stopped. It just completely stopped. And then I was just here, just experiencing the moment. And it was confusing because I thought, geez, who am I without all these thoughts about who I am? Like, what just happened here? So it was a little bit confusing for me at first because we go from being identified with these stories about ourselves and all these things that happen in our life, and then just going to resting in being, resting in truth, and beginning to experience life from there. And it's kind of like the script flips, and and now we're in it versus an idea about it. So it took me a little bit, and I said, geez, I had some experience, and I was just here now experiencing life as it is. And but I don't know if that's it because these stories I had, these ideas were pretty good. And I don't know if I want to lose them. Like, I mean, geez, who am I without that? And so it took a little bit through the process, but settling more and more in, realizing that all that stuff was created. And, they had asked me, um, one of the teachers asked me, they said, what did you have to give up to experience who you are? And I said, all these ideas and images about myself. I said all the untruths. I had to give up the illusion of who I thought I was. This created person, like, this persona that you create, that I'm this person in this world. From all these little things I do and the t-shirts I wear and, all this, and we create this person. They said, what did you have to give up? And I said, I had to give up the illusion of who I thought I was. And with that, there was a natural resting in being and resting in truth. And yeah, so that's stayed with me. And it's we call it home. I call it home. Um, better place to live from. Yeah.
Well, it reminds me really much about like a quote of the Bible. I know you're like more to Buddhism, but like it says, "Be still and know that I'm God."
I love that quote. It's beautiful, and I've studied many different philosophies, and spirituality is a big one that I'm more so closer to now. Um, but that, in that there's a lot of truth, and I've used it as a quote on retreats as well, just to get people to settle in a little bit more. And it's a closer pointer to the truth, when we're still and the mind stops and we're just in the experience. That stillness and that truth of the stillness and that peace is a closer reality to who we are than any idea about it. So, it's a beautiful quote, and absolutely use it. Now, there's a part that's missing in that, and what we're going for with enlightenment is a direct experience. So in that stillness and in that truth, many people fail to see the obvious. So we rest in this stillness, we rest in this peace, and we sit there and we ponder, well, who am I? And it's kind of like we're overlooking the obvious at times, that that's who we are. That peace, that stillness is the truth of us. But we're still searching, we're like, well, I'll find it one day, and I'll just rest in this nice, warm, cozy place, and maybe something will happen. So we're still kind of searching. Anytime we go to search again, the mind comes in, tries to find something. So resting in that truth, what we're missing is a direct experience, a direct realization where there's an aha, but it's almost like you could say it's a locking in of the truth, where we we come into union, and there's no separation, there's no thought, there's no idea, and there's a clear knowing, and it's an inner knowing. It comes from our being, our soul, and it comes alive, and it's just like, this is it. And so that's a direct experience where the mind stops, thoughts stop, the searching stops, and we begin to rest in that truth. But it's a known. It's like, this is who I am. This is the truth. And so it's a beautiful experience. We call it an experience without an experience, because if it's an experience, technically the mind is engaged, and it's analyzing, it's looking, or it's saying something. But in resting in being, resting in truth, um, there's really nothing happening but what's here currently in this moment, and we're connected to it. So it's as if the senses are not really engaged. More so, we are the ones that are experiencing the moment. The senses are there, but we're behind that. We're not identified with the senses, which is the mind. We're the one that's experiencing all of this. And the senses are there, but we know the truth is we're not the senses. We're the one that's having that experience. So it's just a little tricky there to come into what we call direct experience, or direct realization, or self-realization, where it's clarified. There's just a clarity that comes through it, and there's no more questioning. It's a known, and it's a deeply personal thing. Yeah.
Wow, and how has it changed your life after you have experienced that your home, peace, and quietness,
Yeah.
right? That's yeah. How has that
Uh,
changed your life?
Thank you. What I noticed is instantly after, and I go back to that first direct experience, um, instantly I was just here. I was present. The stories weren't playing in the mind. And I was able to be me, the one who, is here now versus an idea of me or the story of me or trying to portray something or act a certain way or needed to be liked or socially accepted. I was just able to be me, just how I am. And, I wasn't living from the stories of the past, the things that had happened to me. I'm not good enough. I can't do this. There became this moment of pure potential. And this just, there's no idea or thought about who I am. It's just what arises comes through me versus something that's coming from past. So it allowed me to be present with people and in relationships, be authentic. And you could say, come more from love and contact, acceptance, openness, um, and just being authentic. I think this is, when we look at enlightenment and everything else, um, we're going for authenticity. What is authenticity? What is the truth? What is your truth in this moment? And I was able to communicate that more so than anything else. Yeah.
So, so now, like, so it's a spiritual center where you went through, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Uh, and did you like so how does that spiritual center looks like? So like now you work there as well.
Yeah. And so, I say spiritual center. The nice thing about what we do is there's no religion, there's no doctrine, no dogma. So we're offering people a pure place, and it's a it's a pure practice and a pure space where what we're doing is we're giving them the koan to work on. We're saying, look, we're not going to tell you what it is, although I've given some here, some pointers, but still they have to find it. Knowing the answer, hearing the answer is still not enlightenment. So um, this process is called the Enlightenment Intensive. And we just give people the koan 3.5 days to contemplate, to do self-inquiry through a specialized process called the dyad, which is a partner-assisted form of meditation, where you're paired throughout the day for up to 11 dyads a day, 40-minute dyads with the new partner. 5 minutes aside, you contemplate and you just work on these koans. So we start with who am I? That's the beginning. And then we go up to the other ones I gave. What am I? What is another? What is life? What is love? So these are the five main ones that we're using. And, I hold them online now. That's something that I've been doing for a little while is holding them online. And I've made it work over Zoom, and we have Zoom rooms where they're paired with two people. But we were doing them in person originally before the big internet and everything else was available. And so it would be a residential retreat. People go away to resorts or retreat center for about 3.5 days. And we enter this silent space and we're just contemplating the whole time. We're doing the inquiry. We're really going inwards and continuing to contemplate for 3.5 days. Who am I? So there's not a lot of teachings. There's a technique that we teach, which is simply, how to contemplate, how to do the self-inquiry. And we give guidance, support along the way. Anything coming up. I mean, people will go through all kinds of mental barriers and whatnot. So, um,
Yeah,
yeah,
so
go
can I
ahead.
ask you, for example, my mind would say I need to do something.
Yeah.
like so because what comes up with me is like, so now you are sitting with a question which, like, I think the better the question the better the answer, so these questions are very, but my mind also says that might be boring for you, Lucia. Did you also encounter that, or do people encounter that, and like, how, why is it not boring?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. The first thing we look at, and it's tricky, is first day, I generally let people just go wherever they go, however, whatever comes up. And people will take it as a question. People will say, well, who am I? Well, I've got these answers for you. Let me tell you about it. And so we let them go and just dump all the mind stuff as they do the inquiry. They're paired with a partner. So they do the inquiry, they go inwards, they contemplate, who am I? And then what arises, they're allowed to communicate it to their partner. So the first day, they just dump all this stuff that comes up around who they think they are, which is good. And people generally like that. But we're going for the direct experience. So it it may seem like this could be boring or something, but believe it or not, there's so much that arises that it's a very full retreat, and very fruitful for people to go through all these things, these identifications. Eventually, we're using a koan, so it seems like it's a question. Now, Buddha used the koan, "Who am I?" To have a direct experience, awakening or enlightenment. And so the point of a koan is not to answer the question, although that's the first thing the mind does. The mind says, move out of the way, I got this. You just sit over there. I'm gonna give all
Yeah,
these. I've watched
I
the
can do
videos.
this.
I've read. Just sit over there. I got it. So after about a day, I start to hone in on, we're really going for this experience, and these things will arise. You can communicate it, but go back inwards and rest more inwards with this koan and allow it to work in you. So the goal of a koan is just a pointer. It's that unanswerable question, and the mind literally has to break. So the mind's like, I'm gonna answer it, and it won't give up. Like it wants to keep going, and it wants to answer. So eventually the mind is like, I can't answer this. And so it stops. And in that stop, and in that koan that's pointing to the truth, there's an opening or an opportunity. Now we're getting closer. And it doesn't happen right away, but at least we've come to more of an open space where they're like, wow, whatever answer arises is not it. Huh. So let me stop answering. Let me be still here. Let me rest. And then let it come to me. Let this experience come to me. In this koan that I'm using, it naturally begins to point us that way. So it's the unanswerable question is what it is. Yeah.
It's kind of like sitting in that sphere of who am I, and then, oh, that's so interesting. Like, so for once I did this. I had like an enlightening experience. I would describe it like this. So like I had like this horrible belief that I had, and they would say just it was like, my mother wants to hurt me. She wants, or he wants to hurt me. Somebody wanted to hurt me. So to just accept, welcoming it. But because I was with somebody, I was welcoming, and then suddenly there was this shift, and I was like, wow, it's so quiet. And then and he said, well, this is actually enlightenment, but it will come and go, right? Because this was my first really visceral. And I was on my bike and I was like, wow, reality is so different now. Like it's almost like I was living in this belief. that, my mom doesn't love me. That came, if your mom doesn't love you, oh, that hurts, right? But it was fake. She does love me. And my whole world was like, but I only remember that it only lasted so long. So is this like for you and your students the same? Is it something that you have to come back to and practice?
Great question, and thank you for telling me about your experience. Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. So all this stuff comes up, and there's a lot there. I mean, we've lived our lives for however long, and we've lived in these illusions of all these things. Now, we have this experience, and there's a recognition in it. This is the truth. And of course, now we go back into life and, we're however many years old. Um, I'm 53. I was 27 at the time I had my near-death experience. So I've had, 27 years of experience living in this illusion, you could call it, not knowing the truth. So, with our process, the beauty is that it's 3.5 days. And so by about the first and a half, second day, generally people start to wake up, awaken. Not all, it's not a guaranteed thing. A lot of people come in with a lot and it doesn't quite happen. And sometimes it happens sooner. Um, but, with our process and the inquiry, you keep doing it and you keep going. And even after you found it, you're able to communicate from that place. So it's not just, oh, I had a flash. It's like, oh, let's get personal here. Let's really sink into this. What's it like to be home? Oh, what's it like when my mind comes in? Oh, what's it like when the stories come in? Okay, what's it like to rest in my home, my true self? So, with the process for 3.5 days, you're able to start to see through a lot of these things. Now, it's still tricky because, on the retreat, everything's good, people are kind, and, everything's the container. We've got a safe container. People aren't allowed to do this or that. So it creates a safe space where people can open up and find that truth. Now we go into life, and people will be not be kind, and the world in general, is not always kind. Uh, so this brings up a lot within us, and then the illusions start to come back. So we're starting to flip back into, no, I'm got to be tough and I got to fight everybody and I'm a fighter and no one's gonna push me around, or all these things start to come back up, those attitudes, beliefs, ideas about who they are and how they need to be and how they need to function in the world. So it gets challenging because, to live from our truth and to live in a world that isn't always kind, and um, and relationships are difficult too. um, in relationships, we say it's our mirror to start to see, who we are, how we are, and what triggers us. So we start to look at, now we begin to say, well, I may know who I am, but whether I can live from it and be who I am in the world, that's the journey. I mean, this is, I honestly call awakening and enlightenment kind of kindergarten. And I don't want to say anything, but I mean, it's the ultimate starting ground. It
Oh my
is,
gosh, that is
it,
so funny.
it's,
Because we
it,
think we've been there. We have arrived.
yeah. So, and it's our natural state. It's our naturally who we are, and coming back home is beautiful. Um, but it's the beginning. Now, how do we live it? This becomes the question. How do I live this in my life? And then so life comes, past conditioning, all these attitudes that we've adopted and these ideas of life. So now we're trying to navigate that from our mind sometimes, from the truth of us sometimes. And so we've got to kind of go through our life. And I say to people, now you're on a sadhana, a spiritual journey to weed away the untruths. And as these things arise and as you get pulled out of your truth, beginning to notice these things, these triggers, these upsets, and working on our mind sometimes to clear out, these traumas that have happened in our life and you know to allowing the mind to let go and allow us to be at peace. But it's challenging, and so we offer continuation retreats where it's good to come back every now and then or do other practices that allow you to rest more in it, stay more with it. But we go back into life, we got these roles, and it's busy. We've got to do this, we've got to do that. And they require a certain energy, and we've got to step up and, act that way or do whatever. But it's not getting lost in it, be in this world, but not of this world. And knowing that, this is a role that we're playing at times. The follow-up work that I do, which is really good, it's called clearing, and I call it heart-mind clearing. And so that really starts to teach us how to live in life in alignment with our heart. Um, it's all about our relationship to everything and where it's coming from. Even with my programs, I offer low cost events for people that are struggling and whatnot. So I always look to try and help people if I can, anyway, with costs and whatnot also. Um,
How much does it cost? Because that gives an, like I always believe when you have a number, then you
yeah,
can manifest. But if it stays unclear, you're like, oh, I will never be able to pay it, or
yeah. For our online events, it's $250 to $350 donation and Canadian. And if people are struggling, I'll go down to $150 or even less,
mm,
uh,
wow.
or 3.5 days, possibility of enlightenment. So I look at it as, it's what's called your dharma, giving back what you've received, and it's a service where I'm trying to offer this to others to wake up, to awaken, and to humanity in general, because I know, my life was suffering before enlightenment, and I was caught in a lot of illusions and upbringing and everything else, and not feeling worthy or good enough. Um, and people living in these ideas of, you know, you got to be rich, you got to be this, you got to wear that hat, you got to be this type of person. It really allows people to come into who they are, the truth, live it more, and then start to share from that place. So um, it's been important to me to be able to offer that at low cost for people and to help people wake up, create a world, um, where people are awake. People do have good intentions for others, are kind to others, not because they think they need to be, but because that's who they are. So creating a different world or just a more connected world is important. And, I always say, as a being, as a person, there's this pond of consciousness of humans, of life, and we're throwing a stone in there. And wherever that we're living from, it could be from the mind, the ego, or it could be from the soul. And what type of ripple effect are we having on the world? What type of ripple effect does your stone have that you cast into that pond? And what is it that what's your legacy? What are you leaving behind? what's your purpose? And it's important to to know who we are so that we become more connected to our truth and we're sharing more of that in the world. So I always love to support people in finding that truth, and it feels good for everyone, and it feels good for me to bring people back into alignment with that, and creating this world going forward with more awakened beings, more truth, more love, and yeah, more reality. Yeah,
Wow, thank you so much, Attila. Yeah, I've read some people that worked with you and they praised you or like your work and your presence, your kindness and your accessibility, which is amazing because like a lot of spiritual teachers, well, that's probably also a mind thing. But if we're living in our mind, we don't realize we put everybody a little higher, right? Like, oh, I could never be enlightened. That was Jesus or that was Buddha. But I'm really happy that you make it so grounded and so daily and so accessible. So thank you so much for speaking into that and also for a very accessible price. So
yeah.
we there can be more enlightened beings here.
Thank you. Yeah, we have our next online event is January 29th to February 2nd. And, I'm offering this in all time zones now. So all
Oh,
across Europe, North America, Canada. Um, I really want to make it accessible for people, and making it online has really helped bridge all these places together. Um, and it's been a blessing, for me to offer this for people, and the joy that it brings in my life to see people awakening and supporting them on their path through all the difficulties that can arise along the way, and then to see them come home. That's the gold for me, and that's what keeps me going. So it's been a blessing to be able to talk about that a little bit, and share a little bit about my journey. Thank you so much.
you're welcome. So Soul Spark community, here's your opportunity.